Hello all and welcome to the official FanTeam podcast brought to you by FanTeam, the biggest daily fantasy site in Europe. My name is Andrew and today I'm joined by injury analyst and fantasy football guru Ben Dinnery. It's great to have you on, Ben. I would imagine it is a very busy time for you.
Good morning, Andrew. Thanks for having me on. It certainly is. I've enjoyed a couple of days of respite during the international break, but obviously injuries are still happening. We're in the middle of this COVID crisis pandemic, so that brings its own set of issues. Let's just say, but looking forward to getting back to the normality of the Premier League in round 5 of the season.
So, like the start of this season so far, the football has been absolutely mad. It's been so unpredictable. How are you finding it from a fantasy view?
So I came into this season knowing that teams are coming off the back of one heavily disrupted pre-season or none at all, particularly those who were involved in European competition towards the end of the last campaign. And I tried to pick an almost a set and forget for those first 4 game weeks. I didn't want to be involved in any emotional transfers around, freak results, because I know that players aren't going to be performing anywhere near the levels that we would expect them to be. There's going to be a bedding in period for teams. So I thought these first 4 game weeks, reevaluate during the international break, would be a good, opportunity to do that. Looking at the way the situation, the way it's been, I'm probably now looking ahead to the next international, break, given the results that we've seen in game week 4. But I've had very little tinkering. I've made 1 transfer this season, that's all, and that was brought around by the concerns heading into game week 4 with Richarlison in his ankle injury. So I wanted to make sure I had somebody decent on the bench to potentially come in. Should have Richarlison miss out. He subsequently started but lasted less than half an hour. So that's it's like I say, I picked that team, ignoring fixture difficulty, just basically ignoring everything. I went with my team and I've stuck by it, and with mixed results. A poor start. I had a great second week, a very solid third week, and a pretty poor game week 4.
Okay.
So peaks and troughs.
Peaks and troughs indeed. Great stuff, and many thanks for coming on, obviously, Ben, as well. So this morning, Ben and I are going to look ahead to the Game Week 5 full round classic with a mouth-watering €100,000 prize put on offer for just a €20 entry. We'll be running through the weekend's applicable fixtures and sharing our entries with you. But before we jump into that, we want to give you a reminder of the season-long €1 million competition, which you can still enter with 70% of the average points scored after Game Week 4, which equates to 163 points. Ben, how are you enjoying the season-long game, and will you be entering any more teams this week? Because obviously the cut-off, I believe, is next week in terms of entering with the average points.
Really enjoying it. It's obviously exciting. The possibilities of being able to win some life-changing money is, was just, when I first heard about the game, towards the back end of, as soon as the season finished, literally when it was announced, I was blown away with the sums of money, and it really, it's almost it's the dreams, it's the hope that kills you, because I've already got that first prize money spent. So if I don't win it, I'm not sure what's going to happen. But I think my fan team setup is reflected what's happened on the other games. I didn't want to be drawn too much around fixtures and forms at this particular point. And I've veered away from those real sort of elite premium assets, the big players, the high ownership players, with varying degrees of success. I did have worries heading into the season. Trent Alexander-Arnold's, the Kevin De Bruyne's.
Yeah, cool.
Fortunately, those haven't hit the ground running so far, so I've dodged a bullet. But maybe over the next, the coming game weeks, I'll be looking to reevaluate as teams begin to settle into a pattern of play, and hopefully, attaining those sort of levels in condition where we'd expect them to be.
Indeed. And so for those who haven't seen it, and for those who have, to serve as a reminder, The prize pool for the season-long FanTeam competition is €1 million with a world record, and as Ben said, life-changing €200,000 first prize, with huge cash prize going all the way down to 5,659th place, meaning every one in 13 entries will finish in the money. If you want to take advantage of the Game Week 4 average points, or take a look at the rules or prizes for yourself, and our YouTube watchers can click in the link in the description below, and our podcast listeners go to fanteam.com and go to the EPL €1 million 2021 tab, where you can create your own team and compete for the massive prizes on offer. Later on, we will also touch briefly on the return of the Champions League, with again some incredible competitions and prizes on there from FanTeam. Please remember to click the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen if you haven't already, and press the like button if you enjoy our content. Just a reminder to enter all FanTeam contests. You must be 18 or over and be gambleaware.org. So our feature tournament for this podcast and video is the Game Week 5 full round 100k classic game. So our watchers and listeners are aware what it is. It's very similar to the free hit chip in Fantasy Premier League, where you basically pick the best 11 plays for the game week that you think will score the most points. Ben, do you find it easy playing this game?
I enjoy playing this game. I certainly enjoy this sort of shootout, format. Easy, I wouldn't say, it's easy. I think it's a completely different mindset from moving maybe from a season-long game to other formats. Trying just to sort of drill in and hone in on a particular fixture or particular set of players. I think it carries a greater degree of luck as well. We can always pick out one or two teams or games where we, more often than not, you would expect certain results to go a certain way. But like we've seen back in round 4, Tottenham at Old Trafford, Aston Villa versus Liverpool, it never quite pans out exactly how we'd hoped or maybe as planned.
Indeed. We have the rules on screen now for our YouTube watchers. Very, very easy. You build a squad of 11 players, include at least a goalkeeper, 3 defenders, 2 mids and 1 forward. You can mix and match with anything else you want. You can select up to a maximum of 3 players from any one team. The contest is only for Game Week 5. You have a $100 million budget to spend on an 11-man team. Pick a captain and vice-captain. Player prices will not change. One really good feature with this as well, there is a safety net. If a player does not start, he will be replaced automatically, if possible, by a cheaper player from the same club and position. So very straightforward to play, but as Ben said, there's a lot of luck and skill involved to actually make the money and to win it. And just to touch on the prizes for this first prize, and this is just for a €20 entry. First prize is €10,000. Second prize is $6,500. Third is $4,800, and the prizes go all the way down to 1,264th place. So there is plenty of cash to go around there. It's a really great competition. I've really enjoyed it this season. When you're struggling in kind of standard season-long games, just to be able to have a go on this and pick the players for the one game week, I said I found it quite refreshing, and a lot of fun, and you end up watching games in a different way. But yeah, I've really enjoyed it so far this season. So the 9 applicable Premier League matches for this competition this weekend are Chelsea versus Southampton, Manchester City versus Arsenal, Newcastle v Man United, Sheffield United v Fulham, Crystal Palace against Brighton, Tottenham v West Ham, Leicester versus Aston Villa, West Brom versus Burnley, and Leeds versus Wolves. At first glance there, Ben, there doesn't seem to be any massive standout fixtures there that we can really target. What are your thoughts on the fixtures?
An absolute minefield, first and foremost, Andrew. The concern is we've still got international games, and there's been players domestically who've been involved in 3 international fixtures. So the clubs are going to want to assess those players just to see what times of levels they're at. We have players maybe like James Rodriguez that Carlo Ancelotti flagged before he went away. They're going to be involved in late night games, and then you're relying upon airlines and transportation and travel and getting back to grounds. So it's difficult. So I think that's the key little bit of information that I would suggest for anybody watching is follow the press conferences, try to absorb as much information as you possibly can, because that's an opportunity for you to gain a little bit of edge. Like I say, these one-off, these shootouts, anybody can win it. That's the I suppose that's what makes it so appealing to anybody. It doesn't matter what's happening in your season-long games. It could be, bottom of the world.
Absolutely.
But, on this one particular, game week, you've got an opportunity there, like you say. And, 10,000 euros and what have you, that's still life-changing to a lot of people. Absolutely. So, follow the news and, like you say, try to gain that little bit of an edge and insight into all your competitors.
In terms of the fixtures themselves, I found it really hard this week. It's the first week of the season. I found it quite tough, actually, to really target teams and target matches due to, obviously, the unpredictable nature of the results that we've seen. Very much a lack of clean sheets across the board. So choosing a defence, for example, has been tough. Even targeting games. If I look at those games, so Chelsea home to Southampton, just for example, I would think with Pulisic back and Werner maybe playing up front, that's potentially one to target. Man City always tend to beat Arsenal, though Man City haven't been playing very well, and Arsenal haven't tightened up. And Spurs and West Ham is probably the only one, which really kind of shouts out to me. Spurs have been playing really, really well, but West Ham have scored 7 goals in the last 2 games and haven't conceded. Which of those games kind of appeal there to you, Ben?
The standout for me, as it currently stands, it would be Tottenham.
Yeah.
And it's Harry Kane that's sort of ticking all the boxes for me at this moment in time. We obviously have an England qualification game to come through first and foremost. We know that there's been some kind of, I suppose, not an injury issue concern, but he's certainly been managed through the last week or so, which is great news for Tottenham. Yeah. I think it's something that was being picked up by the media. It's all been blown out of proportion, really. And I think similarly along the lines of Kevin De Bruyne. But for me, like I say, Tottenham look to be the standout. There's one big difference on the West Ham sideline coming in this week is David Moyes returns. And so we're going to lose Alan Irvine from sort of calling the shots from the line through Moyes. So we'll wait and see what happens on that front. But West Ham against Newcastle on that opening weekend, what terrible. And for me, they were living up to that relegation candidate. But they've bounced back and fair play. They've put in some great performances in there. But for me, even without the result at Old Trafford, and obviously buoyed by the confidence of that fantastic result, I think Tottenham would be the one that I'm looking at. And Harry Kane for captain is where the armband is currently going.
Okay, so talking about your team, Ben, we now have it on screen for our YouTube watchers. For our podcast listeners, could you just run through your team, Ben, and maybe give us some insight and thought into how you arrived at it?
Much work in progress. So it is liable to some last minute changes. It's obviously just an early template that I've got. I've went in the back line. I've doubled up on Sheffield United. I've went with Aaron Ramsdale and Stevens in that back line. I've went with a 3-4-3. And I think Sheffield United have been a little bit unlucky. Yeah. Performances maybe haven't reflected, results haven't reflected the performances. And, Chris Whaler still runs a pretty tight ship. You don't turn a bad team overnight. And all this tosh about second season syndrome, look, it just maybe isn't falling into place. There are a few new additions to that squad. It'll take a little bit of time to settle. But for me, against Fulham, who I'm hugely disappointed with, I'm hastening to add, I see their first sort of 3 points on the board. I see a clean sheet. I did like Fulham when they came up. I thought they would be okay. Yeah. But having watched them on 3 occasions this season, I've been massively disappointed. It's clear defensively that they're struggling, and I was maybe tempted by Mitrovic at one point, but I just don't see it with Fulham, and then arguably probably for me probably the worst team in the top flight during those first 4 games, really. So that was the reason I'm doubling up on Sheffield United. Alongside him, I've went with Lamptey at Brighton. I think he's been a revelation really since his form and performances from Project Restart. That's just carried on forward.
Been a wonderful player, haven't he?
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, look, it's going to be a difficult game at Selhurst Park. Palace started pretty well, although they're off the back of a poor result. You don't really see Crystal Palace scoring many goals ever. So you've got the possibility of a clean sheet maybe in there, but also Lamptey gives you those potential of those attacking returns offensively, bombing on. So I quite like that. No real concerns with regards to a minor hamstring issue that forced him off in the last game week, so we expect him to be okay. And I'd have him alongside Reguilón. I am a Doherty owner on other formats. And for me, I would like to see Jose go with a 3-5-2, Reguilón and Doherty as your two attacking wing backs. We haven't quite seen that yet, and I'm not sure. It'll take a brave manager to make any changes to the side that went to Old Trafford and won 6-1. Now, injuries might determine that he needs to make some changes. I know that there are concerns at this precise moment around Eric Dyer. So we could see a 3-5-2, but I think Reguilón, like I say, is a good option. Tottenham versus West Ham. I know it's a London derby. We can expect a pretty, tight affair. But for me, like I say, I'm not fooled necessarily by those couple of results that West Ham have had when David Moyes hasn't been at the helm. So I'm expecting Tottenham to carry their form forward from United. In midfield, now this is an area which I dare say will be looking to maybe change things up a little bit. Newcastle have a tough game on Saturday evening. We entertain Manchester United. But if anybody's going to produce anything in terms of attacking returns alongside Callum Wilson, would be Alan Saint-Maximin. He certainly is a man for the big occasion. He either runs very hot, as he did against Burnley, or he's disappeared and he's a bit of a non-entity. He's had a good opportunity to rest up over this international break. I think he's picked up knocks in every game he's played this season, knees, ankles, foot. Nothing too serious, but just a concern just managing those. So I think you'd benefit from those 7 to 10 days just being able to sort of take him away from competitive football. We're on telly, and like I say, a man who delivers against strong opposition. So I expect a big performance from him. And it could go either way. The United confidence is going to be very fragile. If Newcastle can get an early goal in that, you could see their heads drop. And there's no reason why we might not hit 2, 3, or even 4. 5-0, with a Philippe Albert chip over Schmeichel, then that would be absolutely fantastic. I've took a punt on Christian Pulisic. For me, Chelsea's standout player, showed before his injury, pre-injury and post-injury, how much of an asset he is. The slight concern is that obviously he hasn't started a Premier League game in quite a while. And although he's got that base level of fitness, he may not just have that little bit of sharpness, that little bit of competitive edge. And again, it'll come down to Chelsea again coming off the back of a big result. Does Lampard, stick with the same starting 11, or does he bring Pulisic in, who arguably will be much better placed than he was, in game week 4? And if he does start, you maybe only be looking at about 60 minutes with that, given the fact that it's been sort of ongoing and persistent muscle problems. So that's my question mark. But he's in there for the moment against Southampton. Which I expect to be, a good game, a really good competitive game. West Brom. This is West Brom at home to Burnley on the Monday night, and I actually tipped Burnley before the season started to go down.
Oh.
Big call from me. A lot of engagement on social media around that, and I'm a big fan of Sean Dyche. I think he's done an absolutely fantastic job. But I took a look at the players who left during Project Restart. I took a look at the players who had currently injured, and in terms of resource, they're really stretched. For whatever reason, the board don't seem to be backing Sean Dyche. They haven't went out there, they haven't been able to strengthen and bolster that squad as he would have liked. And I think they're only one or two key injuries away from being in real trouble. Had they lost James Tarkowski during the window, I would have thought, that was, for me, that could have been the nail in the coffin. We will see more or less, a full complement of players back for Sean Dyche, but I just feel it needs to be freshened up, that squad. I think, I'm not saying it's a little bit stale, but there's a heavy reliance on the likes of Chris Wood to deliver. Jay Rodriguez, when Ashley Barnes was out, now Ashley Barnes is back. The reliance is those players are going to carry the team. McNeil needs to be on the board. You start to, if those have a dip or they pick up an injury, then they'd struggle. And for me, like I say, West Brom have been giving it a good go under Slaven Bilic. We see it against Chelsea when they went 3-0 up. They're capable of scoring goals. So I went with Pereira in there. He's somebody that I overlooked or ignored or dismissed in pre-season when I done my pre-season preview on the Baggies, and I basically said that there isn't anybody in that squad that would that's worth me time considering at that moment, and that in any other format I think that's probably still the same. But again, we go back to this 1 week shootout, and the fixture appeals. And given, like I say, given the form of the two sides and what we've seen recently, I think Pereira is a good shout. And in the fourth and final midfielder is Trossard at Brighton. Again, I think he's been just a little bit unfortunate, and he could have returned a lot more. Brighton have been very unlucky in the performances. Played well against Chelsea. Should have had at least a point against Manchester United. So you're expecting it. I've been quite impressed and surprised by Graham Potter. I mean, I was a Chris Hughton fan. I think he has to be one of the most unluckiest managers ever to he got sacked by Newcastle, didn't do a lot wrong. Got sacked by Brighton when he hadn't done a great deal wrong. But Graham Potter's come in and he's had a year to impose himself, his own philosophies, and change things around. And I'm expecting Brighton to kick on from what they produced last season and see a sort of solid season from them. And Trossard and Mupai are an integral part of that team, along with Lamptey. So now, these are the money shot. Yep. We've touched upon Harry Kane. So at the moment, I see he's carrying the armband. Now that could potentially, given what Ollie might say on Friday's press conference, that could be swapped over to Marcus Rashford. I know United are travelling to my hometown club. Never let sentiment. There's no room for sentiment in football, so it would be it's a head over heart. But we have Edison Cavani, who is currently self-isolating. We have Anthony Martial, who will be getting a 3-match ban. And for me, it means that it's going to be either Marcus Rashford or Mason Greenwood leading that United attack. So, I think Marcus Rashford, if Ollie confirms that, possibly that he's going to have him as his lone striker, maybe, then that may be enough to persuade me to give him the armband. And finally, position-wise, it goes out to I'm keeping the faith with Danny Ings. Again, I loved Southampton during Project Restart. I loved what Danny Ings was doing. Again, he's been involved with the England squad. He's flying high in confidence. He's already on the scoreboard. Chelsea defensively are suspect, to say the least. To say the least. We've obviously got Mendy out as well for Chelsea, or potentially out. It's not looking good for him to recover. We're looking at Kepa once again, and we're not only talking about a goalkeeper with fragile confidence, but it's almost what that lack of confidence translates into that back three or back four, which Chelsea will go with, and that sort of seeps through the team. So if he goes with maybe Zuma or Christensen or Thiago Silva, question marks maybe over Chilwell. You've got Azpilicueta, you've got Reece James. So, he still hasn't got that settled backline And I think that would be a concern and a worry for Frank Lampard. And I certainly don't expect Chelsea to keep a clean sheet this weekend. And if that's the case, Danny Ings won't be too far away.
Agree. I expect a lot of goals in that game because Southampton obviously play with a high line as well, and you've got the pace of Pulisic and Werner and wherever else. But as you say, that they can't defend very well either. So I do expect that one to be a really good game actually. So okay, thank you, Ben. Really nice team you got there. We've got a few the same. So I'm just going to touch now on my team. So I've gone for Martinez in goals, Villa away to Leicester. I find that it's very difficult to pick out clean sheets, so I've just tended to throw in some cheaper players at the back normally. But I do think that Martinez is a very good shot stopper. I think he's one of the best in the league. Actually, I think he'll get a lot of chances to stop a lot of shots against Leicester. While maybe I don't expect them to keep a clean sheet, he will get saves. Although Leicester obviously lost at home last week 3-0 to West Ham, so you never know what will happen. Leicester are very kind of hot and cold, aren't they? And they don't have a lot of shots, so we'll kind of see what happens there. I've also gone for Reguilon for Tottenham. So I'm a Spurs fan, so I was watching him in great earnest last week. And when Ben Davies came on at left back, Reguilon actually moved forward, and he was playing in a very strange position in the last 5 or 10 minutes, almost behind the strikers, which I found very, very strange. He was on some set pieces as well. He's very, very quick. He apparently in training, he's been absolutely shocking them with how fast he is. So I think he could still be a bit under the radar at the moment. Looks a really good player. I have gone for a couple of cheapies then in defence to try and push my money forward. So I've gone for Jamal Lewis. So I may be a bit more excited about Newcastle chances than you are. I think Man United, I do agree with you. It could go one or two ways, but I just can't see how Man United without Martial are just going to turn it on. Newcastle, I think if he's playing actually well, I think that Wilson has finally given that kind of spearhead in attack, and it's given them a focal point, given them a bit of something to kind of get behind. So while I don't...
I would, sorry to interject that, on a just a word of caution. Jamal Lewis is currently considered a doubt, withdrawn from the Republic of Ireland squad due to an ongoing Achilles issue.
Right. So
don't think it's anything too serious. So again, that's just one fighter maybe to have a look out in the press conferences. So at the minute where it's touch and go, fairly confident you will recover, but it may not be 100%.
Okay, thank you. But obviously, the great thing in FanTeam is if he doesn't play, I get another Newcastle defender anyway. But I think I think Newcastle have been good. I think United haven't been good. So while I'm not expecting much, his price in here 5.5, he may get something. And I've gone for Creswell. So again, being a Spurs fan, like 30 years of pain is as we tend to not win the games we expect to kind of win, and Creswell obviously got a couple of assists last week. So I've gone for some Spurs attackers, which I'll touch on now, but it's not all about clean sheets in FanTeam either. He's very, very cheap. He's 5.6. So again, I just kind of pushed the money forward, but there is a chance of some attacking returns there with the likes of Soucek and whatever else. Potentially on the end of his crosses, you never know. Moving into the more exciting midfield, so I have gone for Heung-min Son. So you mentioned Spurs; they're playing really well. Last week against Man United, they reminded me of that Spurs season. I believe it was 17-18, their last season at White Hart Lane, when they just completely dominated games, and that's what they did against Man United last week. They're absolutely superb, and Bale may even play this week. He may be off the bench, but I think he's just added this extra bit of excitement for Spurs around the place and give them a bit of a poke in the arm, a bit of an injection of excitement. So I've gone for Son. He's obviously on form as well, right? Elite finisher, great player. I've gone for Pulisic, the same as you, even though I think you are right, actually. I'm not sure he'll get more than 60 or 70 minutes. I think he actually heightens Werner's appeal, because I'm hoping now that Werner will go up front and Pulisic will be feeding Werner. We'll see from there. I've also gone from Pereira as well from West Brom for the reasons you mentioned as well. But I have gone for Grealish. So, he looks really good player at 7.9. I think he's quite cheap this week. Again, Leicester are not great at the back. Villa will be on the highest crest of a wave that they've been on for a long, long time. So, I expect Grealish to be central to everything they do. Wonderful player. And then up front, so I've backed your boys. So I've gone for Callum Wilson. So where you've gone for Saint-Maximin, I've gone for Wilson. He is on penalties. United are so sloppy at the back. I fancy Wilson to get a chance or two. And while, they may not win, I expect Newcastle to score a goal or two. I've gone for Kane as captain, the same as you, all the same reasons. On penalties as well, which we know this season has been so prevalent and such an important part of the fantasy game. And I've gone for Chris Wood, maybe a budget pick. I really like Wood. He is on penalties. They're away to West Brom, who obviously defensively have not looked good at all. So, I just think again, I expect West Brom and Burnley. It's kind of a bit of a battle of the out-of-form teams at the moment. And out-of-form defences as well. So again, even if West Brom do beat Burnley, I still think Burnley would score and would by far as their main threat. So that's my team at the moment. I will look at Lewis, appreciate that, and potentially I may swap out Pulisic for something else. But as we've already mentioned, it's a tough week this week, but it just makes it all the more exciting. I may put in a couple of entries with a couple of variations of different teams as well. So what do you make of that team, man?
I mean, pretty strong. I mean, look, you can make a strong case for anyone really. These first 4 game weeks. It's you get the template and you rip it up and you throw it in the bin. That's right. And so looking ahead and coming off this international break, I think that just muddies the waters even more. And I'm sort of glad maybe Everton and Liverpool are not included in this week's fixture list because, you're then thrown in the Calvert-Lewins, the James Rodriguez who's been away, and then the Mon, or even just Liverpool full stop in the situation with regards to the goalkeeper and Alisson being out. And do you risk going with any of that Liverpool backline? So I think that's probably worked out quite well. We might have had 1 or 2 sleepless nights with regards to that. Love your faith in Callum Wilson. I think you're right there. I don't know if it was the first 3 or 4 game weeks, but we've had 2.5 times more penalties at the same stage this year than we have had last year. So, the shrewd managers among us will try to be picking teams with as many potential sort of penalty takers within our squads as possible. And look, I like it. I think for me, and as with you, like quite rightly said, the Pulisic one is a conundrum. He's at 13.2 million. So there's quite a wedge of cash stuck on that. I'm not sure we'll get too much from Frank Lampard. If I'm right in thinking, did they come into the break 4-0 winners over Palace?
It was a very uninspiring 4-0 win, but it was still a 4-0 win.
Whether again it comes down to what Pulisic has done in training, over the past sort of 7 to 10 days, and also how Frank feels about changing that starting 11. And maybe, like I say, his hand may be forced. Certainly looks like the goalkeeper's going to be out. And possibly Chilwell as well. We'll have to wait and see.
Fantastic. So there are 3 full-round classic tournaments every weekend. One has a prize pool of €10,000 with a guaranteed first prize of around €1,700, which you can enter for as little as €2. There is a high roller tournament if you want to play for big money, but the feature tournament we have just been talking about is the €100,000 prize pool game with a guaranteed €10,000 first prize for a €20 entry. So we have more exciting competitions here if you're a fan team with the kickoff of the Champions League next week. With all 16 games included over the 2 evenings, you will not want to miss it. The deadline is at the kickoff of the first evening game, well, with a prize pool of €250,000 and a first prize of €50,000 and prizes going all the way down to 1,744th place. I will certainly be entering a few teams into that. It is great to see the Champions League back. Ben, are you excited about entering some teams in the Champions League format?
Look, when you these are like telephone numbers. It just blows me mind the amount of money available within these prize pool. I've been involved in fantasy gaming sports for a long time, and during those early days, it was almost frowned upon. It was laughed at. You talk to mainstream, media outlets, and they would laugh and snigger. What do you do? Well, have fantasy football, and it was just disregarded. It was dismissed, and it was forgotten about. What FanTeam are doing now is raising the bar
100%.
and makes people stand up and listen and start taking this industry seriously. If you haven't considered fantasy sports before, if you hadn't thought of it as being, mainstream, this is doing exactly that, and this makes people all over the world stand up and really sort of take notice. And wow, honestly, it's fantastic for us players who love playing the game. And if you can be rewarded for your hard work and efforts, then I'm all for that.
Completely agree, mate. Fantastic. So that is it from us from this episode. All the links are below for all the games we've discussed today. Thank you so much, Ben, for joining me this week. We'll have you on again very, very soon. Great insight, great chat. Thank you so much.
Look forward. Thank you, Andrew.
Excellent. Remember that if you liked what you watched, please press the like button. And remember to subscribe to the channel in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And if you're listening on a podcast, please rate the podcast and leave a comment. This podcast will be available as a video on the FanTeam YouTube channel and available as an audio podcast, all major podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud. Just search for official FanTeam podcast from wherever you get your podcasts. Our website is fanteam.com. Our Twitter handles are FanTeamOfficial and FanTeam_UK. Give us a follow for regular game updates and for free entry giveaways for this €1 million competition, as well as lots of other FanTeam competitions. We'll be back next week, looking ahead to Game Week 6 Full Round Classic. The very best of luck for this weekend. Goodbye for now.